This is Eye on Hong Kong with Key.
And this is Harminder, and we'll be discussing the top news for the week involving Hong Kong and China. And welcome to the 36th episode of Eye on Hong Kong. And is it 36? Key. Oh, right. Key is not here today. I got rid of him. He was awful on this show. No, I'm kidding. He'll be back next week. So you have me this week to sit through. And stick around for the second half. We have an interview with Yondan Latu of ATV. He's the senior editor of the English news department, and he has quite a lot of interesting stuff to say about what's going on at ATV, so you want to stick around for that. Okay, so this week, earlier in the week on Sunday, we had the pro-democracy march. The organizers that had it, they said about 50,000 people would show up. 13,000 showed up, and that's their estimates. That doesn't include the police said about 6,600 when they left Victoria Park, and then 8,800 at its peak, and others said 10,000. So let's just say that we used the very liberal number of 13,000. They expected 50. Now, what does that mean, though? You have people, either they're fatigued from protesting, or they think protesting is complete BS and it's no longer an effective way to let the government speak. And then the government complains that people are suddenly becoming more radical. They're becoming very, very dangerous. They're fighting with the police. The police are fighting with them, and it's a bad example for kids, and so on and so forth. But whose fault is that? Right? I mean, if the government took heed of the protesters' wishes, I don't think they would resort to more radical actions like we saw the Occupy movement of the umbrella movement. And they only really have themselves to blame for such an inept, ineffectual government. And it really comes down to government telling us what to do when it's them who should be listening to the people because they work for us. The problem is everything's been turned on its head, where it's we support the government equals we support the central government equals you support the motherland. That's not how Hong Kong works, and I don't know what kind of information the central government's receiving. I have an idea, but I can't confirm it. But the way we think here is that, and I know a lot of people will say, oh, it's you thinking about colonial times and everything. I don't lionize, I don't glorify the colonial era. I just commend them for giving us certain institutions in the city, like the ICAC, the rule of law, our courts, and the governmental system, and then of course you get the whole, well, they dictated to you what not really. When the government was seeing that there's turmoil in society, they did something about it. Okay. This government, the CY Leung government, continually says, we know what's best for you. Sit down, shut up, and just let us do what we want. Of course, if we let you do that, we would probably all be out in the streets again, living in shanty towns, because CY Leung's property easing measures have completely failed, and they were meant to fail, because the real problem with the property, of course, is low interest rate policy set by the Hong Kong Monetary Authority under the government and Norman Chan. And they're saying we got to continue our peg to the US dollar, when that's killing Hong Kong middle class and lower income people, because inflation's rampant. We're not receiving anything for our savings. People see that they're not receiving anything from the bank, so they're putting their money into assets like property and driving it sky high. And of course, we got mainline investors as well who are trying to, I'll just say, invest their money in Hong Kong because, property is a big thing in Chinese culture, and that's fine. It's in a lot of cultures, Indian culture as well, and other cultures. That putting your property is a hard asset, and well, yeah, that's true. It's a good asset to have. Everybody should own a piece of property, especially to call their home. But what happens when it's so out of reach for the average person? You get breakdown in society as well because people want to overthrow the system. That's the government's own fault for following this. The best thing it can do is unpeg from the U.S. dollar. The U.S. is killing itself with this low interest rate policy because the banks are getting all this free money. They don't need your money anymore from the bank because they can just get it from the Fed, or they can just go to the central bank and say, give me more money. That's what happens with money printing. We don't need your savings. We just go to the central bank for more money. Then it doesn't get loaned out because why should they take the risk? They put it into real assets, drive the asset price up, make the money, and that's the end of the story, right? How is that supposed to help the middle class at all? It's going to kill the middle class. So you can have all the land supply you want. You can have all the buildings that you want to put up. You can shove people in public housing, and some people need it. Of course, it's also being abused, as it's been shown last week, that some people are abusing that system, and all welfare systems eventually get abused. Well, it's not like capitalist systems don't either, but I'm just saying it does get abused. Not everybody's an angel. They work the system. So Siwa Leung's property, alleviation methods have failed. The only thing that can happen is you raise interest rates where they should be, bring down inflation, and also kick out the speculators and bring the property prices down. Anyways, I went off on a tangent from going from the protest to that, but it's not just one issue. But what happens when you want to go radical, like some people say? That's what people are resorting to because they feel that the government's not listening to them. Look at the public consultations. They're never listened to. The third runway that's being proposed is no longer, I can see myself where it can work, but there's so much public opposition. It's just like, well, yeah, we know, so who cares? We go ahead with it anyways. That's a problem. That's a serious problem when you're not listening to the people. And then what's going to happen with the next government? It's going to get more, people are going to get more radical. What happens with more? It's going to become so ungovernable, but who's going to be to blame? Oh, you young people, you post-80s lazy generation, you post-90s lazy asses that no longer want to work, and you think that, you want a free ride. No, people work pretty damn hard. Post-80s, post-90s. I'm part of the post-80s. I work pretty hard. But I'm blessed with a upper middle class family. We don't have to worry about housing. But what about everybody else? I'm not going to be some selfish, jackass out here saying that, well, I'm doing fine, screw everybody else. That seems to be the mentality of the more rich class these days. They don't understand that when everybody does good, you do twice as good. It's every man for himself, and that's a problem. But point is that I think people are fatigued from protesting. One, we'll see what happens July 1st. And the second thing is that the government has itself to blame for not listening. That consultation report that went up to Beijing, that was pathetic. That was not a consultation report. That was just Beijing hearing what they wanted to hear, and the chief executive saying, yeah, everything you say, that's true. That's true. Anyways, we'll move on from that. We have Professor Johannes Chan, who's expected appointment as the executive vice president of HKU, Hong Kong University. He was attacked by Ta Kung Pao and Wen Wei Po because earlier in that week, a report came out that Hong Kong's HKU's law academic work wasn't ranked very high on the world stage. I don't see why it's any of the newspaper's business to say that it's because of him that the rankings are not higher. It's what's best for Hong Kong. how is the university contributing best to Hong Kong? I mean, yes, it's a plus when it contributes to the world, but it's most important to see how has their work contributed to Hong Kong. That's what's missing from the so-called articles. And they're ripping them like it's the Cultural Revolution all over again. Do not interfere with academic freedom. It's that simple. No news. You can criticize work that's being released, but you can't just say, well, this guy's been too pro-democracy. Professor Johannes Chan has been too pro-Johannes, I'm not sure. Potato. Has been too pro-democracy, and that's why the rankings go down. Well, no, not really. Every universities are a bastion for critical thinking, or at least you hope it is. And you're going to have different sides of every argument. I think the newspapers should butt out of universities and let the university student councils and the university top council handle it themselves. Moving on, we have the police probing arson attacks on parallel goods trading shops up in Seong Soi. Now, again, you have to understand what's been going on. Mainland tourists and day trippers from Shenzhen have fundamentally changed the landscape of certain districts, especially the northern district, which includes Seong Soi, but also Yuen Long, Tuen Mun, Tai Po. These have also been overrun by tourists, and then the shops that were traditionally serving the community can't afford the ever-increasing rents. So what do you have? You've got the same stores over and over again. You got the same Mannings. You have the same Watsons. You have the same dispensary stores, which are really just general goods stores. And what do you expect, people? They're going to, when the government doesn't listen, people resort to radical means to solve their problems. I'm not glorifying what these people were doing, firebombing shops and attempting to firebomb shops or set them alight. I don't condone that whatsoever. I condemn it. But you have to understand why people are resorting to this. The good news is that government seems to be somewhat have their ears now open. They're going to open a tourist destination, shopping destination up in near the Lok Ma Chau border. Name eludes me at the moment where it is exactly. I believe it's near Yuen Long. And but the thing is, it's not exactly going to be the glitzy malls or the shiny shops. It's actually going to be containers. It's going to be containers converted into shops. They're using old containers, putting them on this area, and then turning those into shops. A third will be shops. The rest are going to be like restaurants and other food shops. You're partway there. People, tourists especially, don't want to go to stuff turned into a containers turned into shops. They want to go and say, I went to Plaza Hollywood in Diamond Hill, or I went to APM in was it Kun Tong, right? I went to Millennium City or all those other malls in Yao Tong and all these new shopping districts, Sha Tin. You got to make malls at the border, like duty-free shops, but duty-free malls, you can say. That's what's going to take away the strictly I want to shop crowd to go there. This is a start. You can make it like a flea market, I guess, but it's not the best solution. So hopefully the government will move on to brighter ideas than that. Moving on, we have billionaire Jack Ma, the owner of Alibaba, saying that he's going to inject 1 billion Hong Kong dollars to young Hong Kong entrepreneurs to his company. Well, that's all fine and dandy, but the thing is this what we have to resort to? It shows how out of reach even opening up your own businesses in Hong Kong now. most young people have to start now from their homes instead of opening a shop. If they want to open a shop, they have to compete with the high rents. I mean, it's insane right now. Again, it comes down to this speculative bubble economy that the world is in, and Hong Kong's not immune from it. But now we have to rely, and it's good that Jack Ma is injecting this, of course, through the Our Hong Kong Foundation, which is Tung Chee-hwa, former chief executive Tung Chee-hwa's foundation, which is fine. I mean, you want to open a foundation, fine. Anybody can open a foundation. I just think it's out of step. People don't need $1 billion. They want to see social mobility in the city. And young people are disenfranchised right now. I mean, I really hope this $1 billion won't just be thrown out into the wind or it never materializes. I'm sure there are a lot of young entrepreneurs that will welcome this money, but it's sad that we have to now rely on billionaires and the government to get us off the ground. Do you remember Hong Kong in the 60s and the 70s? A lot of people don't. I don't. I read up on it, though. Most people picked them up by their own bootstraps. They made themselves by starting off small and then building themselves up. But that was the market that you could do. Now, we have a Hong Kong economy now that's mature, saturated, and our we're told all day, just look to the mainland for your next opportunity. Look to the mainland for your next opportunity. Well, here's the thing. The mainland economy is not so easy to get into. You can't just walk in there and say, I'm opening a store or I'm opening a business. Here we go. You got to go through all these regulations. You have to go through all the licenses. You have to go through all the bureaucracy and bribery. I mean, that's been well documented of people just to get your business off the ground. Then if you're a big corporation, you know, China has the unfair advantage of saying you got to partner with one of our corporations if you want to come in here. SIPA, who has it helped? What has SIPA, which is the supposed free trade agreement between Hong Kong and Guangzhou, how has that helped anybody here? Very few companies have benefited from that. It was supposed to help lawyers, accountants, medical. I mean, it's helped some, but very little. And all day long, we're told, look to the north, look to the north. How about Hong Kong? How about Hong Kong? You want to build this technology bureau, which is now being filibustered in LegCo. But the thing is, government gets in the way usually. The IT industry is maturing by itself. No thanks to government. The government's job is really to promote Hong Kong, to say, you want to come here to open your offices, your IT offices. We got the infrastructure. We have the first world high-tech infrastructure to build your IT company for the rest of Southeast Asia and maybe beyond that. But no, the government says, no, we want to be directly involved. Whenever government gets directly involved, it usually doesn't do a good job. But in an economy where it's more fascist than it is free market, you have to have government involved more than ever just to make sure people don't fall into abject poverty. I mean, we're in a real conundrum. We are in a real big problem with this fascist, corporatist, crony economy that we have. And then we got to look to billionaires like Jack Ma to help our kids out. I mean, really, it's really sad that this is what's happening. All right, moving on. Beijing officials and, well, I guess you could say Beijing officials because they have NPC delegates here. And even pro-establishment heavyweights like Zhang Yao-Sing, Jasper Jung, president of LegCo, has shot down Ronnie Tong's proposal of promise us that in 2020 the functional constituencies of the Legislative Council will be abolished and the threshold will be lowered for nomination in the 2022 2022 chief executive election in exchange for us accepting the current package put forward by the government for the CE election of 2017. They've already shot it down. They're saying it's unconstitutional. We can't promise anything. Every time they say they're like May. Well, we've heard that before. We've heard May, and it's no. So pandems kind of know that they want something concrete in writing this time, not just a wink and a handshake, because let's be honest, Beijing officials have kind of proven that they're not to be trusted. They say it one way, but then 10 years later, they'll say, no, what we meant is, and now everything is about national security. It's not about national security, it's about party security. No one wants to overthrow the party. How can Hong Kong overthrow the Communist Party? Well, I guess you're looking into history, right? Because Dr. Sun Yat-sen, who founded the Republic of China, used Hong Kong as his base for overthrowing the Qing dynasty. I think that historical significance there of what he did is what makes China, the CCP, very weary about what happens in Hong Kong. And of course, they just say foreign forces. But I'd like to see some evidence of that. Hey, you provide evidence, I'll be the first one to call it out. I don't want any country interfering in Hong Kong affairs. China can comment on Hong Kong affairs under one country, two systems, but they're increasingly being directly involved and indirectly involved in Hong Kong affairs. That's a violation of one country, two systems. But of course, that's been reinterpreted too. Just look at the white paper. So that idea has been shot down. Doesn't seem like that's going to go anywhere either. So expect the package as it is to be shot down. And then, of course, we're going to have another chief executive running our lives like Siwa Leung or the wonderful Regina Ip. Regina Ip, who says she has to get ready for the 2017 election like we didn't know you were before. Thing is, you're not... I wouldn't blame people if they're now starting to make plans to leave Hong Kong if they think Regina Ip is going to take over as CE. I mean, is she competent enough? She was just robbed of 500,000 Hong Kong dollars from her Swiss bank account. When she opened an email attachment, they got the details of her account and transferred that money. Here's my question. What are you doing with a Swiss bank account? I mean, you're saying that it's to pay for your kids' tuition, but the thing is you can do that directly from Hong Kong accounts. You don't need a Swiss bank account to do that. Of course, banking secrecy laws in Switzerland are wonderful, aren't they, Miss Ip? We'll move on from that. We have the medical professionals going through a survey. The functional constituency lawmaker, Leung Ka Lau, he did a survey, and I want all legislators to do this. This was a great idea. He put out a survey to the medical professionals saying, do you accept this package? Do you think it's reasonable, acceptable? Should we accept it? And majority said no. A good 60%, I believe, said no, reject it. It is too restrictive. It will screen out candidates, and it should be voted down. And he was considered somewhat pro-establishment. So that's another vote lost. Now, other than the finance will do anything that Beijing says. So Lung Sing doesn't count. But I'd love to see what all the other professionals would say, plus the geographical constituencies. I mean, you can easily do a survey with your teams. You have the staff to do it. You can do street surveys. If you can set up booths for free blood pressure monitoring, you can set up booths for as a survey. Do you accept Beijing's restrictor framework for the 2017 CE election? He did a great job. And I think it's commendable that he did it. And now he says, well, you know what? I don't think I can vote for this because my constituency says you shouldn't. So good on you. The liaison office had a annual banquet here in Hong Kong. The liaison office's director, Zhang Xiaoming, said the same stuff. You know, pro-democracy bad, the Occupy was bad, accept the framework, blah, 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 means nothing. Kwaka Ki, the Civic Party lawmaker, wasn't even allowed inside because he had a yellow umbrella. So that's been going on. And finally, I want to talk about the flu. It's still killing people. Almost 130 people, unfortunately, have perished from the latest H3N2. Yeah, H3N2 flu outbreak, and no vaccines are available till April. Here's the thing again. They guess the vaccine. They guess what strain is going to be next year's flu, and then they make a vaccine out of that. So they're just guessing. They're not sure. And most of the time it's wrong. Number one. Number two, why isn't Ko Wing-man, the health secretary, why isn't he saying, while if you want the vaccine, get the vaccine, only 10 to 15% get it anyways. Why doesn't he say the practical stuff? Get your vitamin C, get some vitamin D, which is the sun when it's out. You can get supplements for it, but study the supplements. Not all supplements are the same. Some are completely garbage. But nothing about that. Nothing about wash your hands. Well, they're saying, yes, have some hygiene. Great. Get off the bus. Get off the MTR. First thing you should do is wash your hands. There should be more emphasis on what you can do at home, because healthcare starts at home, not just through a miracle needle, right? What you get through a needle. I mean, you read the insert of the flu vaccine, read the insert, not the fact sheets, the insert that comes with the vaccine. Read it. Most of the time it says it does not prove that you'll get the antibodies for the flu. It's not been tested properly. It has multiple side effects, possibly stuff like Guillain-Barré and all this stuff. I mean, you got to study that. And you can do basic stuff, vitamin C, vitamin D. There's supplements like elderberry that have been proven to be very effective against the flu. Chinese medicine has a lot of preventative measures for the flu. And even if you get the flu is not exactly a bad thing. And 90% of the people who died were elderly, over 65. Most had chronic conditions of other diseases where their immune system was shot. And then the other people that were not elderly had low immune systems or other systems that the flu compromised them even more, and it led to their passing, unfortunately. So people should just do their own research. I know there's been a lot of talk about vaccines and measles and stuff like that. Just do your own research and make your own informed decision. But nobody should be forced to take a vaccine, because some people have natural ways to deal with certain diseases, So the flu vaccine is not available till April, but there are plenty of things you can do before then. Research just vitamin C, quality vitamin C supplements, and vitamin D, and elderberry, and ginger, and echinacea. I mean, there's so much stuff that people can do to prevent getting the flu. And if you get the flu, there's stuff that can help you through it. It's just 3 days of sickness and you'll be fine right after. But it's been made out to be like this end all and be all. It's not the Spanish flu. It's not the Hong Kong flu of the 60s, I mean, things have changed since then. And I do want to get to one more story, and that's there's been an increase in infant formula smuggling. I believe the magistrate even said that it's getting out of control. I think the solution is don't have this limit. Get the suppliers to increase supply. And you can even have a membership card for local mothers who need the infant formula, and they get priority. And there's got to be a system in place where it can't be abused by their relatives or whatever. They have to prove that they have a child, maybe birth certificate and stuff like that, in Hong Kong. So it's not that difficult. Anyways, we'll be back in the second half with our guest, Yondan Latu from ATV, and he'll have a lot to say about that situation.